Objects have a price. Humans have dignity. Let's explore. Last month, as I was going through newspapers, especially regional newspapers, I couldn't help notice a surprising news item. Three different locations, three different places, one in Tamil Nadu, one in Shillong, and one in Kashmir. Three different newspapers, but all of them carried a similar news item, and the news story was about rescuing child labor. And the moment I saw the three news items, one thing that struck me was, can we use humans as means? And that brings me to Kantian ethics or Kantian principle of respect for persons. And today, that's what we'll be discussing. Let me start by quoting Kant's categorical imperative. And the imperative reads as, act so that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in that of another, never as a means only, but always at the same time as an end. Now, the key word here is never as means. You cannot use humans as means. You cannot use humans as instruments. That's what Kant is trying to tell you here. And the word I say respect for person principle, that means you have to learn to respect the human being. And when you read such stories of child labor or human trafficking, what you notice is we actually don't respect that principle. There are three things in this categorical imperative which one has to take note of. Firstly, what Kant says is we should always treat humanity in ourselves and in others as an end in themselves, never as means. In other words, what he's trying to tell us here is we have to learn to respect humanity in others and ourselves as well. Secondly, if you read the imperative very carefully, the first word is act. So Kant is talking about acting, not about feeling. Because displaying of respect to other person is about acting in a certain way or not acting in a certain way. Thirdly, what is noteworthy about this categorical imperative is Kant is very clear here that we should refrain from using humanity as means. We should always look at humans, or I should say humanity, as an end in themselves. And this is what we'll be exploring in today's episode. And in fact, we'll be exploring this whole concept of not using humans as means from public service perspective also. Next time when you go to a tea shop, and if you happen to notice a child serving you tea, can you imagine how the child feels? Just look at life from the child's perspective. Do you think the child is in control of his life? Or next time when you go to a tire shop to fix a puncture, when you notice a young boy helping the mechanic fix the car or fix a bike or fix a puncture, can you imagine how does the boy feel not to be in control of his life? Now, what actually happens is when somebody uses you as means, what happens is you lose control over your own life. And humans, we are all human beings. As human beings, we all have an end goal. We all have an end in life. We all plan. We all have something to look forward to. And our daily actions are focused on achieving those ends or achieving those goals. But when somebody uses you, you lose that capacity to act freely. You lose the capacity to perform actions. And this is why we lose our autonomy. When I say lose our autonomy, that means we are not in control of our lives. It's somebody else who dictates your life. It's somebody else who takes control over what you do in life. So when you end up using somebody as means, that's what the person loses. In 2013, there was a case study on child labor. Let me read out the case study. Sivagasi in Tamil Nadu is known for its manufacturing clusters on firecrackers and matches. The local economy of the area is largely dependent on firecrackers industry. It has led to tangible economic development and improved standard of living in the area. So far as child labor norms for hazardous industries like firecracker industries are concerned, International Labour Organization has set the minimum age as 18 years. In India, however, this age is 14 years. The units in industrial clusters of firecrackers can be classified into registered and non-registered entities. One typical unit is household-based work. Household-based work means children under the supervision of the parents/relatives. To evade child labor norms, several unit projects themselves as household-based works but employ children from outside. Needless to say, employing children saves the cost of these units, leading to higher profits to the owners. This is the key sentence that everybody needs to focus on. Needless to say, employing children saves the cost for these units, leading to higher profits to the owner. That means owners are using the children to make more money. That means children are being used as means. On your visit, let's take the case study forward. On your visit to one of the units at Sivagasi, the owner takes you around the unit, which has about 10 to 15 children below 14 years of age. The owner tells you that in his household-based unit, the children are all his relatives. You notice that several children smirk when the owner tells you this. On deeper inquiry, you figure out that neither the owner nor the children are able to satisfactorily establish a relationship with each other. So this was a case about child labor where children were being used by a third party. If you notice the case study very carefully, there's one sentence which you need to focus on. And the sentence focuses on, or the sentence says, that the household unit owners were using the children because that contributed to more profitability. At the moment these owners started using the children, what exactly they were doing was they were using these kids as means to make more money. Now, there's a clear violation of Kantian principle of respect for person. And let's explore one more situation. This was a professional setup where children were being used. Just imagine if your friend uses you. Just imagine your roommate uses you. How would you feel? In 2003, there was a movie called School of Rock. I don't know how many of you seen the movie. And the movie revolves around two roommates. And both were musicians. And one was Dewey Finn, who was more of a failed musician. His rock music career didn't take off. And other was Ned. And Ned was a substitute music teacher in a school. And Finn, Dewey Finn, the failed musician, was actually sponging off Ned. He was living off Ned. It so happens one day, Ned was out and there was a phone call from a local school principal. And this lady, this school principal lady, she wanted a substitute teacher on an emergency basis. And Finn, that is Dewey, didn't even think twice because he needed the money, he needed a job, so he just took up the offer of being a substitute teacher, impersonating Ned. Can you imagine your friend uses your identity and gets a job in a different school without even telling you? And what is more interesting is, Finn goes to the school, takes the job, continues masquerading or pretending or impersonating Ned all the while, and he slowly starts putting his roots there. And slowly the kids take on to him, and slowly he was able to build a small rock band, not realizing one day his charade will be caught. And yes, Finn's charade was caught sooner than later. And can you imagine how Ned would have felt being used like this by his own roommate? And what was so shocking was when Dewey picked up this offer, he didn't even realize how Ned's professional personal image will be affected by all this. Can you imagine Dewey is living off his roommate and he had no qualms about impersonating Ned at all. And in a way, destroying Ned's professional and personal image. So look at the two situations I discussed. One was where an organization, a setup, a firecracker unit using children. That's different. Look at this, your own friend impersonating you, using you. Now my larger question is, do you think your friend has a right to use you as a means? Just think about it. Don't you think when your friend uses you as means, he or she somehow violates his basic principle of disrespecting humanity or disrespecting you? Think about it. Just imagine next time when you take a Uber and the Uber driver is taking to a certain destination. Don't you think you're using the Uber driver as a means to achieve an end? Don't you think by using the driver to reach to a certain destination, you're violating this Kantian principle of respect for persons? What do you say? Okay, let's take it down. Let's clarify things here. Now, when you use an Uber driver to take you to a certain spot, you're not actually using him. Why? Because the driver consents or agrees to take you to that spot. Why? Because his end is to make a livelihood and your end is to reach to a certain spot. So both the ends collude, both the ends meet. Your end is also taken care of and the driver's end is also taken care of. His livelihood is taken care of and you reach your destination. So both the ends collude. So in such cases, you're not actually using them. You're not violating anybody's personal moral autonomy. Now, what we need to understand here is, how is this principle relevant to public services? How is this principle relevant to today's modern corporations? That's what we need to understand. And that's what we'll be talking about now. In fact, that was a question UPSC also had a couple of years back. Implications of this whole principle for public services, corporates, and for us as human beings. Let's take it up. As I've often said in classrooms, that in public services, a public servant deals with human life. And this categorical imperative of Kant deals with treatment of humanity. A public servant is expected to treat every single person who comes to his office fairly, impartially, without violating their moral autonomy. So that's the first most important implication of Kantian principle for public services. Treating humanity fairly and respectfully. Oh, by the way, acting respectfully. That's the first thing. This categorical imperative forbids us from using other humans as means. In fact, in our personal relations also, we have to learn not to violate other person's moral autonomy. We have to learn to treat the other person respectfully. We have to ensure that the other person has freedom of choice. That is, we don't control their lives. We don't impose ourselves on the other person. So that's the second part. No one likes to be used. That's the essence of this categorical imperative. And this is something every administrator needs to remember, that you cannot use a citizen to further your career. When you're serving somebody, you cannot use the person who's served as a mechanism to improve your career prospects. A public servant needs to remember that every human being has an inherent dignity. You have to respect that. And that's the most important implication of Kant for public services. And please remember, every human being has a dignity and learn to respect that. Now, today we explored the Kantian principle of respect for persons, which implies not to use humans as means. And this was precisely the question UPSC had in the year 2014. And the question read somewhat like this. Humans should always be treated as ends in themselves and never merely as means. Explain the meaning and significance of the statement, giving its implications in the modern techno-economic society. If you look at the question very carefully, it revolves around this word, humans should not be used as means to an end. And this is what we discussed today. And precisely why Kant said this is because no human likes to be used. And please remember, objects have a price. Humans have dignity. And learn to respect that. Happy learning.